Okay, I think we should get this meeting started, hey? What do you all think? Right now, I'm looking at a blank screen with just me. I'd love to see some of you. Thank you, Chantel, for showing yourself. And I've got somebody to talk to. Oh, good. Heather also. Hopefully some more of you. Michael's showing up any minute. Let's see. I've got to get my hat on so I can see better. Oh, we got somebody else joining in. Good. How do you pronounce your name? I don't get that right. Ninja? You might have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Do you pronounce your name Ninja?
Neria.
Nadia. Okay, it really is hard to see on my screen.
Oh my goodness, you did very well.
Oh, I did. Okay.
Yes, that's why you from Norwegian. That's Lithuanian. So, and nickname it's easy and Nettie.
That is very easy. Yep. I appreciate having nicknames like that. Michael's going to be joining in shortly, but we can go ahead and get started. I hope some of you have seen more classes since Monday. We talked on Monday. Some of you have seen more classes.
Yeah.
Excellent. What have you seen?
I am in the middle of your TCM fundamentals. I watched tongue diagnosis. I've watched your differential diagnosis. Yeah.
Excellent. How's all that going? Is it making sense to you yet? Or starting to come together, or?
Some, yeah, and it's much better than reading it in books.
Yeah.
I have read here, like little by little, about Chinese medicine over the past 20-ish years or so. Chinese medicine is what got me interested in herbs.
You don't look that old.
I'll be 46 very soon.
Oh boy.
You started young. That's
when I was like a late teen, my grandma gave me a book called The Secrets of the Chinese Herbalist.
I still have that.
And that's awesome. And I, like a year or two later, when I was sick, I opened it up and did what it told me to do. And I've been a believer ever since. So, but listening to you guys talk and watching the videos is, yeah, it's way better for me than just reading.
I learn better that way myself. It comes more to life.
Yeah, and I do have a few questions for tonight, so.
Well, go for it. Well, let's just start things off.
All right. One of them, I should have written better questions down. This, I have no idea what class this is from, but it's about hot phlegm blocking the heart and then orifices and.
Yeah, I did that one.
Okay, so I guess I wanted to know more herbs or a formula to go along with that than maybe what was stated in the class or something.
Yeah, there's one formula that you can't get. The other one is Wen Dan Tang. Wen Dan Tang. I got a little bit of my scone in my mouth.
I'm putting it in the
Wen Dan Tang.
Oh, thank you.
Check the chat.
But don't expect miracles with this. It helps people, but it doesn't necessarily cure.
Okay.
Just like you can't expect cures from Western psychiatrists, you can't necessarily expect cures from herbalists. Although sometimes herbalists can get things that Western doctors can't get and vice versa. But this is a case where you're helping people.
Well, that can be a more severe pathology, so.
Okay.
Yeah, schizophrenia and psychosis.
Exactly. But the kind that attacks, that is outward, that is aggressive with heat.
Those
Because,
are the people that are walking down the street shouting at everything and talking to themselves.
right,
Okay. Okay.
or standing on the street corner shouting at everybody, saying things that don't quite make sense.
Got it.
Muddled thinking is the phlegm on the brain.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then a couple more questions. How do I use apple cider vinegar with shells to get the minerals? Like, is there something in one of the books, or is there
No,
like,
you just take eggshells and put them in a little glass jar and pour apple cider vinegar over it, and it dissolves.
okay, easy
Apple
as
cider,
that.
apple cider vinegar will dissolve any calcium because calcium is alkaline.
Okay. And then question about fluids. So regarding breast milk, when some women say, or they're told they don't have enough milk or whatever, is that along the same lines as the rest of the fluids in the body and
What
not
kind of
enough
milk?
fluid?
Breast milk?
Yes.
Drink dandelion routine or any of the thistles, and it just pours out. I don't know why, but evidently it's triggered by through the liver. It's amazing how that really works. It really is quite experiential.
Tell us about your experience, Michael.
Yeah. I had the milk just come out like that, all over the place. I had to get a mop.
I'm not sure that was your question, but that's a great herbal answer for sure.
Okay.
Question, did that answer your question?
I was wondering if it's treated just as the other bodily fluids because I am in the birth community in my area, and it comes up a lot.
Milk is one molecule according. Excuse me, I'm like so much for my eating my whatever it was got stuck in my throat. Milk is one molecule different from blood.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you're giving a baby milk, you're giving them your blood with one molecule changed. And that's why whatever's in your blood from what you've eaten or what you've taken goes to the baby.
Including water, which is part of the blood too. So it is considered a fluid of the body, but there are very specific herbs that either promote breast milk, as Michael said, or dry it up if there's a need for that.
Yeah, and I've known those with like Western medicine. Okay, can I ask a couple more questions?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Regarding the lungs and any breathing issues, does that always have to do with kidneys? Any lung or breathing issues?
When you turn your face away, your voice goes away.
Sorry, I'm looking at
and
lung issues. Well, lung issues, first of all, breathing issues, you always look to the lungs first. And there's lots of patterns for the lungs, external patterns and internal patterns. So yeah, any breathing issues, you always look to the lungs first. But if it's harder to inhale, then there tends to be a kidney involvement where the kidneys are not rising up and grasping the chi and bringing it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
let me ask you a question now. Are you ready
Yes.
for it? What does she mean by patterns?
A set of symptoms?
Yeah. It's referring to a specific diagnostic method.
Or
You know
Okay.
what, you know what method that is? And I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just trying to find out if you know the method that she's referring to.
With harder to inhale? That?
The idea of patterns. What is she referring to? Okay, I'm going to just answer the question. It's a system. You remember I mentioned that there's 10 diagnostic systems. You vaguely remember that?
Yeah.
Starting always with what? Always start with what? Everybody, whoever can answer it first wins the prize.
Observe, like what you observe, what you're observing.
No, whoever can. Hey, some of you people just sitting there looking really cute, and I got you there. I can see all of your faces and stuff. Come on, answer. What's the first thing you have to do when you diagnose? What's the first diagnosis? Oh, come
The
on.
8 principles, the 8
8 principles. Yay. She wins the prize.
Guys,
Okay, so what are they?
external, internal, and I don't remember.
that's a great
Um,
start. What
okay.
else would be part of it?
Hot and cold?
Hot and cold.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Heather
remember.
is just shaking her head looking cute there. Come on.
You're doing
Um,
really great, Nikki.
Excess deficiency
Yes,
Yes, okay.
and yin yang.
yes.
What
Excellent.
else? One more.
Well,
More?
they got them all.
That was 8.
That was 8.
Hot and cold?
Yeah, Nikki said that.
Okay, Chantel, you got that? You got all those?
Yes, and it's
Okay,
like
the second one is pattern diagnosis. It's sometimes called, it used to be called symptom sign diagnosis. It's like Chinese checkers, where you have a number of particular signs that tell you that a particular organ is imbalanced. Okay? And what Lesley said about breathing is that breathing issues go to the Chinese checker square, which is the lungs. And within that square is going to be lung deficiency, lung dampness, lung, what else? Phlegm. You know, there's several different ones, and each one of those has a treatment principle and particular herbal formula that treats the lungs and for that particular problem. It just may happen that one of those treatment principles in that pattern coincides with a disease. Or if you go the route of the disease, okay, you following me here? You got me? You got it? You got it?
keep going.
Okay, if you go the route of the disease, then the disease will exhibit one of those lung patterns. Or the patterns will tell you that it could be this disease. Now, did that throw you at all? Heather, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Would you please tell Chantel what I'm trying to explain in my stupid, horrible way? Go ahead.
Sorry, I got a bit lost there, spaced out.
Okay, all right, we're gonna go over to some other sleepy person over here. Narika Hopkins. Would you please tell Heather and Chantel what I was trying to explain?
So you're looking at 8 principles. And if you find that.
That's the first one. We're on the second diagnosis. In other words, there's 10 diagnoses. You remember my talking about 10 diagnoses?
Yes.
Okay, which
Yeah.
one was I talking about when I mentioned that?
The disease pattern.
That's right, disease. That's one of the 10.
Right.
Hey,
I didn't even realize there were 10.
Itchy, you're a pretty smart one over there. Okay, that's good. Okay.
I just heard that. I did hear that part, and it was surprising to me because I didn't realize there were that many. So I look forward to getting to those.
It's really
But,
important. Oh man, it's so important. And what's the idea? You choose what? You choose the diagnostic system that is appropriate for the situation. There's a sub caption under that slide that says taking the right tool for the job.
Mhm.
Sometimes the disease is going to be the right tool. I'm trying to say that it's more the right tool than most people think. So always the pattern diagnosis is going to be in there as potentially a good right tool. But there's others. There's the 3-joule, the triple warmer, right? Okay, so I'm going to ask somebody here who's sleeping. I know, Amy. I gotcha. What's the triple warmer?
The triple warmer is the upper jowl, middle jowl, lower jowl, I believe.
All
And the
right, you got it.
upper jowl is everything like your lungs. Middle jowl is your intestines, everything above the belly button. And then your lower jowl is below the belly button, but it also includes the liver.
Oh my God, you win the grand prize. I was hoping I'd stump you on the liver one there because everybody thinks the liver's in the middle.
Mhm.
Okay.
Intestines are the lower jowl, though. The middle jowl would be the spleen and stomach.
Okay, so the kidneys are the lower jowl.
No, the spleen's not in the lower jaw. The liver's in the lower jaw with the kidneys.
We're talking about the middle jowl. So yeah, kidneys would be in the middle.
Kidneys in the lower.
You put them in the lower.
They always are. I never known anywhere else. You want to
Well,
fight?
you've got the bladder.
Okay, I'll see you after this webinar. We'll fight it out. I don't want to do it in public.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't sleeping. I'm writing my notes, so I'm looking down.
I'm just joking.
Just give them a hard time back.
I'm just if we can't have a little fun with this thing,
Yeah.
you can banter back at me if you want. I don't care. It'd be more fun actually than sitting there seeing. Well, go ahead, whatever. So, Chantel, this was all for your benefit. Do you know that?
Thanks.
Do you have another question?
Yes, I have one more.
All right.
Lesley, you talked about you always like have like 5 treatments for people or 5 goals or something like that.
I do.
Like diet being one of them.
Oh, and like
Movement and
exercise.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
herbs.
Is creative expression separate from emotions, or is that in the same category with your 5?
No, creative expression is really key for helping the liver energy move. It's
So is it separate than the emotion category that you have in there?
Gosh, I don't normally put it in a category particularly, but if you're dealing with the emotions, well,
Shin
anger, what?
Shin goes to the heart, but
Yeah, if
but
you're
but creative energy is not just the heart.
if you're dealing with stagnant energy, stagnant chi, which the liver is in charge of the smooth flow of chi in the body and all the cycles. And stagnant chi is really rampant in our culture. So there's several things that really help the chi move and regulate, and exercise is one of them. And creative expression is another. And it's interesting, a lot of times when people move and exercise, they get creative. All of a sudden ideas start opening because they're getting their energy moving. So then the creative energy can flow more, and vice versa. If all you can do is just rearrange your furniture, believe me, you're going to be getting your chi moving. And you'll be feeling better. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
I think that it's separate than working on their emotions then. I just didn't know if it was in the same, if it was one of, like you had 5 things listed that you always tell have your patients work on, and I just wasn't sure if the creative expression was in.
Sure, make it one of them, definitely. I'm trying to think of what context in which that was, but I always start with diet and then exercise, lifestyle, habits, and herbs, and creative expression. There you go.
Thank you.
You can creatively express yourself and still be very sick.
Of course, but it really opens the liver up and helps move the chi, which then can help move the blood. But there can still be problems in the body. Absolutely. Did we come to the end of your questions?
Yeah, for now.
No.
Some really good ones. Thank you for
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question in that same context. You know, so many people now are starting to use like psychedelics, especially the psilocybin and things like that for end of life, especially if, you know, for to be able to come to the coping with death. Do you think that might be also moving towards that creative expression and like that liver chi movement, trying to like see, being able to see past where they're at?
No, I think psychedelics, you're working on the liver somewhat with the hun, but you're definitely working on the shen, which is the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't put it in the category as creative expression, but how about you, Michael?
I don't know what creative expression's got to do with anything, but that's all right.
Oh my gosh. All right. I'm going to have to sit you down after this.
Creative expression is just an itch.
No, it is so much more than that. All right.
It comes from liver toxicity.
Well,
I
you
have
know,
a couple of questions. Oh,
this
sorry.
is really good for all of you because everybody who knows this medicine approaches things a little differently from their unique perspective. So you're going to be reading things that are from other people's perspectives and they put different emphasis on it. I think, Michael, did you say that in one of our meet and greets, or that when you line up 5 acupuncturists and you
The
have them all
pulses.
take the pulses and they're all going to have a little different view on the pulses.
Right.
So it's the same thing in general with approaching the medicine. And part of it is, like Michael said, there's all these diagnostic systems. So which one do you go to first? And we really focus a lot on pattern diagnosis, but also 8 principles and the 4 levels and disease and other ones that we cover. So how we see creative expression is just both of our different.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with anybody here, but each one of the elements has its own part in creative expression. There's the willpower, there's the speech and thinking and worrying, there's the heart and dreaming, and there's the liver and creative liver is creative. And why do I say the liver is the seat of creativity? Because the function of the liver is it's the alchemical organ of the body. It creates enzymes and things to deal with stuff that enters the body through the blood. The blood passes to the liver. There's a poison. The liver immediately tries to work and see, do we have a reference for this thing that's just coming in here? And if so, we can let it pass or block it. Or any kind of strange flavor, strange texture that enters the blood, you know, through herbs and through food and so forth. Those are all kind of like things that the liver has to process, and it scratches his livery head, and it has to come up with a way of approaching this thing, and it's considered the alchemical organ of the body. You can take that to the bank.
That's the lungs, Michael.
No, it's the liver.
In 5 elements, it's the lungs. So I'm not sure what system you're talking about.
Well, we're talking about another kind of alchemical. So anyway, that's the function of the liver. So that's why I say that. And it's kind of, it's an interesting phenomenon how so many of the great creative artists and jazz musicians and painters and so forth all had some sort of addiction, sickness. I'm not going to make this a rule, but somehow or another we associate them with their problems, and and we associate their problems with the art that came out of it, sometimes as a way of expression. Those are all kind of crazy things, but anyway, that's as far as I'm going to go with creative expression. Let's go on to another one.
Nikki has some questions.
Yeah, I had a few questions if we have time. One of them, in Michael's talk, he mentioned a couple times that certain herbs formulas were used for kids. And I was curious about that. I would like to know both of your perspectives on just, if how you feel about using Chinese herbs with children, and if you've ever used any with kids, and any kind of guidelines if because I'm kind of considering the idea of, is it okay to, and maybe explore that area. And of course, dealing with diet and lifestyle factors as well. But if I wanted to explore herbs, I'm not super confident yet about, how I feel if they're safe, and how to look at a formula and see if it would be an okay one for a child. I'd like to know kind of like guidelines with whether age and weight, if those, just some guidelines on if you wanted to proceed with that, what would I need to be thinking about? With like Western herbs, I've used lots of herbs with my kids, but I'm on my own with figuring out a formula. And, I used like Clark's rule, or so it's called Clark's rule or something, to
Yeah,
kind of help
Clark.
you figure out
That's okay.
dosage. But I don't know when it's a already ready-made formula that's, kind of tried and true. I'm kind of interested in maybe exploring those things, but I don't know how to go about it, thinking about it, and if I should be thinking about it at all. That's my first question.
Definitely be thinking about it. Yeah, you can give Chinese herbs to kids, definitely. I would choose for kids and adults as clean a brand as possible. And there are several out there. So that's number one. A lot of herbs used by the Chinese are used in the West and vice versa. So there's also that.
They go to kids, and they go to animals, they go to puppies, they go to cats, they go to everything.
Fish.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
treated my tropical fish aquarium, and actually I have a patent for using black walnut, and I got a royalty for creating a product that was out on the market for a while using black walnut for the the little white spot disease that tropical fish aquariums get. Because, and what I did was, instead of, the problem of how do you get the herb into the fish, you just put the fish in the herb. You put the tea, you put the tea in the aquarium. It's really very simple, and it's very, very, as I've said very often, over and over again, these things are mostly safe. I haven't talked about toxic herbs, and but we use them very seldom, and they haven't come up in any of the discussions we've had so far, except maybe for periwinkle. I don't know. I'm the jury is out on that one still, but you can give them, and you can get very finicky about it and follow Clark's rule, because obviously little kids, you want to. It's basically you want to get the dose that will get that is therapeutically will create an effect. The biggest problem is always underdosing, giving too little. Overdosing with these things is not such a big deal. People might have a little bit of a tummy ache for a day or a little while, and in this case, you just start lowering the dose, but you're not going to hurt anybody doing those things. I hope that gets close to the answer that you're looking for.
Do you have any, with age and weight, or
Yeah.
like how does,
There is that in the course. But
oh,
I'll tell you a story about curing a little baby of fever that I did when we were on vacation up in Lake Tahoe. And a woman said her baby had a fever and it wouldn't go down, and she couldn't get to the doctor, and she was worried about it. And I noticed she had a big wood pile over there, and there was a bunch of poplar logs on it. I said, just peel the bark off the poplar and boil it up, and give the baby baths in it, because poplar is like has like aspirin properties. It lowers body temperature and it treats fevers, and it worked like a charm. It worked incredibly well. You don't have to give babies or anybody internally. If it's something that they need, you can put it right on their stomach, and it'll go right through the skin in exactly the proper dose. You can make a tea, and a person can soak their hands in it 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, soaking their hands and feet. There's a whole system of herbal medicine that a Frenchman popularized. Messeguet, his name was, and that's all he ever did, was just foot and hand soaks. And the hands and your feet will absorb exactly the right dose, so you can make it really strong. And you can't, there's no problem overdosing. If you have a baby, you don't have to put anything in their mouth. You just make, if you have enough herb, and they're common things that go outside, like plantain and stuff like that, just boil up a big pot of it, pour it into a tub of water, and put the baby in it. It's quite effective. My mother once, she was in the hospital after had a kidney problem, and one of her kidneys was accidentally operated on and removed. It was a complete accident, but she wasn't recovering, and they wouldn't let me do anything because the hospital insurance wouldn't cover it. So I was able to persuade them, well, can I just make a tea, and maybe you can soak a cloth in it and lay it on her abdomen, because that's where her pain was, and that's where the problem was. And I made a tea of comfrey and slippery elm, and they just laid this on her abdomen overnight with a hot heating pad. The next day she was well, and she was discharged from the hospital. So when your body needs something, it takes it right in through your skin. Your skin is not a blockage from the outside world. It's a filter. So that's a whole other way that you can treat people. You don't have to give things internally all the time, if that's an issue.
Especially for babies and young children. And young children do really well with the Ayurvedic method of giving herbs, which is mixing a little honey with powder, 2-year-olds and older. And they'll tend to eat things then and take it in more readily. But in general, your question about internal dosing, yes, I would base it on body weight. So the ratio of a child's body weight to the average adult weight of 150 pounds. So if you have a 50-pound child, you give 1/3 of the adult dose, for instance. And you can start with that. And if it seems to be helping, but not quite enough, then up the dosage. Like Michael said, a lot of times just not enough is given.
Yeah, and remember in my talk, I talked about Lu Wei Di Wang. Let's see. Anybody remember me talking about Lu Wei Di Wang? Romania 6.
yes,
You remember it?
yeah, it's for, that one is for yin,
It's
tonifying yin, I think.
yeah, it's for yin deficiency. Romania 6 and Romania 8 are given to all older people for any kind of chronic condition. You can almost take it to the bank when people come in and they're older, in their 70s with problems. You can just give them Lu Wei Di Wang or Romania 8 if they're yang deficient. But usually yin deficiency is an issue. So do you remember what I said, how that formula was invented, what it was originally intended for?
For children who fail to thrive.
That's exactly right. So And I also said that there's a, in the 4 firsts, we consider a person's age. And for children, young children, and we're assuming there's some genetic problem, some growth problem that they're developing some disease. We're not talking about colds and flus, by the way. And the rule there is always think about treating the kidneys for children. Now, it doesn't mean you only treat the kidneys, but you think of that as the root, and you might add other things on top of it. For middle age, that's the period of stress. What formula do you use for that?
Or what organ is involved,
Liver.
right?
And what's the formula? The most popular formula, we want to put it in the water supply of everybody in the United States.
Free and easy wanderer, Zhao Yuan, I believe it's.
Exactly.
One, right? Excellent.
And for the aged, we always think about treating blood stagnation and phlegm and liver yin, of course, but mainly the problems involve circulation, blood circulation. And phlegm comes about from lack of exercise and lack of movement. The dampness stays in the body, and it gets cooked, and it turns into phlegm, and that begins to block things up, and then you get plaque, and all those kinds of things like plaque and cholesterol that build up in people is just another kind of dampness that's coagulating. It gets into the brain, and you have Alzheimer's and dementia. So you always think about doesn't mean that it's always the case, but when people come in and they're in that age group, I think about those formulas as the first line of consideration. Almost everybody in the middle age group who's worried about anything, and everybody is, needs free and easy wanderer. And that's why if you look in American Dragon, the list of diseases free and easy wanderer is like almost 2 pages long. It's liver cheese stagnation. So
Okay, thank you.
it's easy, isn't it? It's very easy. Just do it.
Yeah, well, you make it sound definitely less scary, so that's good.
I'm trying to impart. That's my goal. If you come here, you're not supposed to walk away scared and never do and think that you're not supposed to do anything with everything we're pouring into you right now. I'm expecting that everything I teach you, you're going to go out and find a use for it, because that's how you're going to learn about it, and that's how you're going to remember it. If I thought it was dangerous, I'd tell you, hey, this is dangerous, don't do that. So leave the danger hat, put it to the side, and just and use the stuff that you're being taught here, because that's the only way you're going to learn it. I've made every mistake anybody could possibly make in herbal medicine because I didn't have any teachers when I was going into it. So I know that people can survive. I'll tell you a bad mistake. I lived in a commune in Northern California, Black Bear Ranch, and hepatitis went rampant on the commune. And there was a brilliant doctor who was there. He also dropped out, and he had hepatitis, and he was up in a treehouse retching with hepatitis. And I was curing everybody with hepatitis with dandelion root, which works really great for that, by the way. But with him, I wanted to be extra strong. So I put in Oregon grapefruit and a whole bunch of bitter things. And we by a rope, we pulled it up to the top of the branch. And we still laugh at it over 40 years later, because he was retching over the side of that thing, vomiting and throwing up from the tea that I gave him.
You gave him that cohosh too.
But at least it got him down off the tree. So I'm saying, you learn through those kinds of experiences, and you're not going to have that one because I just told you not to do that sort of thing. Just use the classical formulas first when you're using Chinese medicine.
Mhm.
Use the classical formulas.
Hi. On something like Romania 6, when you give it to someone who has a failure to thrive syndrome, how long do you give it to them? I mean, when it, like, for especially if a child is like a congenital type issue where they just didn't form
Can be
well.
it can be for months.
Okay. And
But-
if it's something like EDS, like Ehlers-Danlos or something like that, you know, they will never cure, there's no cure for it. Would you keep them on something like that for long term, or would you?
The real bottom line here is the opportunity to heal somebody is at its apex when they're children, because they're growing, and the growing energy is always something positive. So when you see even when people are born and they have a problem, the sooner you get to it, the better, because as you get older, the problem gets harder to rectify. Now, it's when I say that somebody should be on it for months, it means you should have periodic breaks, because the body gets used to it. When you take herbs, they're not necessarily like vitamins. Vitamins are you're supplementing a deficiency. Herbs have qualities, their flavors, their textures, their colors, their density. There's all kinds of different qualities herbs have. Ayurveda lists 20 different qualities. Chinese medicine mainly talks about the taste. Those qualities, irregardless of anything that's in the herb, have their own stimulating property. And so herbs work by stimulating organs and back into correct function. You take a bitter herb and it's stimulating, and it stimulates bile in the liver. It stimulates the release of hydrochloric acid. You're not necessarily giving people anything that they need from the bitter herb. It's the flavor of the herb and the texture of the herb that's stimulating the body to respond. So that's why there's a limitation to the idea that the constituents of an herb are what's accounting for their therapeutic value. It's not that it doesn't, but it's a limitation. Herbs work first by stimulation, and we talk about the constituents of the herbs as having some great benefit. When you actually measure how much of that thing that's in the herb is so little that it's hard to imagine that the little bit that some researcher found in the herb is going to make that big of a difference. The biggest difference is happening through the stimulation of the whole thing on the whole metabolic system from the herb itself.
And I also think you've written about Romania 6 being used before, you put an older person on a ginseng formula.
Yeah.
How does that, can you talk a little further about how, like the steps of of what's happening in the body on the Romania 6 part versus what would be happening at the ginseng part?
Well, we think of Taoists as some sort of a solemn sage. The Taoists I met are usually funny guys, and they're tricksters. And the Taoist that I learned that from was that kind of a guy. He didn't tell you a whole lot. He never told me that he was using Romania 6. But he did tell me that they put him on a special diet for a week, and they took Romania 6 for a week. But he was doing a special thing because he was selling a really high-powered ginseng root, because ginseng gets stronger the longer it's in the soil. And he'd have ginseng roots that are like a foot or 2 foot long, and he'd sell for $1,000 sometimes. The cheapest one was $600, as I remember, one root.
And this is 40 years ago.
Yeah. And after you've done Lu Wei Di Wong, which I found out later what it was, because he never told me. Lesley was with me when we went there and discovered what he was using. He never told me what it was because that was his cow that he was making money from. He had movie stars and politicians from Los Angeles that fly up, and there were no PhDs, no doctors, no credentials. What he'd do is he'd show you his book and all the people that came to see him and their letters saying how much he had helped them. That was his credential. By the way, that's a good thing too for you too. Is collect letters that people give you and put them in a thing and show them to people. It's very convincing. And at the end of a week, he'd sell them the root and he'd tell them how to cook it. And ginseng was cooked it's cooked in a double boiler. It's a ceramic pot, and it's got a little cover, and it's got a cover over the top of that. You boil water and you put the whole ceramic pot in, so everything is contained, and anything that would be volatile that could be lost all goes back into the solution. Or that's how that's called a ginseng cooker. And that precious root, the whole thing was cooked all at once. It's taken in one day. And he said, you know, if you buy $1,000 root, the effects of the energy that you get from it will last a year. If you buy a $600 root, it's about a half a year. And it sounded kind of crazy, except that I talked to a couple people who did it. And the one guy, it was very impressive. He said when he did his ginseng root, he was able to drive all the way from San Francisco to New York City without nonstop on the energy. And it wasn't necessarily stimulant on the energy that he got from doing that ginseng, the $600 ginseng root, done in that way. So what you're doing is you're tonifying yin, which is the vessel, to accept the yang so the body can use it. That's basically yin and yang. Yin receives the yang, you know. It's the female principle that accepts the male principle, which is the ginseng. And so you're preparing the body to be able to accept it and utilize it in its most optimal way. Whereas on the other hand, if you would give just that ginseng to anybody, some old dude coming down the street, he's going to take this ginseng, and he's toxic. It could practically kill him. Ginseng causes hypertension in people because you got all these poisons in the body, and they're not cleared out. So I have a student, one of the free clinic people who gave a formula with ginseng in it, and the person got hypertension. And it's clearly in the book that if you give ginseng for hypertension, it raises blood pressure, but not when you first tonify the yin like that for a whole week and clear the body of all the obstacles, all the things out of the way. I hope you understand that, because I say so many of these things, and I just wonder, you know, are you going to do any of it? I hope so. I really do.
This last bit Michael's talking about has really been kept secret by this Chinese man for a long time. And to be able to discover what the Lu Wei was the formula given the week before means a lot. And it's something you're not going to see written down or heard about very much.
You remember when we were in the store and all those old guys in the store all popped up from different places and said, yeah, we do that in China. Remember that, Lesley?
Yep.
So does that concept apply to any yang deficiency almost, like where you need to like build a yin as well in order for before you build the yang?
I consider this
to a certain extent. So
Qi deficiency.
When you're tonifying yang, it's always good to have a little yin tonic, and when you're tonifying yin, it's good to have a little yang tonic. And there are yin tonics that are not too extreme, if you will, and yang tonics that are not too extreme. And those are the ones that are typically used. It's like qi and blood are very interconnected. So when you tonify one, you always want to tonify the other. I think it was yesterday we were talking about intermediate. The best formula for tonifying blood uses more astragalus, which is a qi tonic, than dongui as a blood tonic, 3 times more. So the same thing with yin and yang. It's they're very interconnected, and yin holds the yang, but yang metabolizes and moves the yin. So you need both together.
And if someone is having issues with the heaviness of a yin tonic, like Harmonia 6 can be kind of sticky and heavy, what is the best way? Like, is there something you can add to the diet, like maybe like apple cider vinegar or something to help? Like,
No, vinegar will cancel it.
Okay, what would be the best way to keep, because so that they don't get constipated if they're having trouble with the heaviness of it?
Give them something with the constipation. Don't give it to them.
Fiber, just fiber?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Luwei is a very gentle yin tonic. It's not nearly as strong as many of the others that can be a lot more cloying. And it has contained within it several herbs that metabolize the fluids already. Fu Ling and Alisma and Dioscorea, they all help with the fluids.
Mhm.
And Dioscorea is a spleen tonic, as chi tonic as well. So that helps metabolize the yin aspect. It's a pretty great formula in itself with all of that. But if you're concerned in general about yin tonics and cloying, you want to add herbs for digestion. Quite often a little bit of cardamom is added to formulas to help prevent the dampness. That's very typical. And then an herb to move qi a little bit. A great formula to look at with that is Iguanjian, which is, I'm going to write it down. I'm not thinking about what the Romania and, no, Iguanjian, Glenia and something combination.
It's spelled Yiguan John, Y-I, right?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat. And I also added to the chat another formula that's great for failure to thrive. But it's really a good idea for yin tonics to definitely watch digestion. It's not unusual, in fact, quite common as people get older, they have both yin deficiency and spleen dampness at the same time. It gets to be a little dance.
So Chantel asked a question to everyone. What do you do before giving ginseng if hypertension is involved? Tonify yin? You could, but basically don't give people with hypertension a lot of ginseng, a little bit.
I was just trying to clarify what you said. I was taking notes and I think I missed something.
Yeah, if somebody has hypertension, you're not going to be giving them ginseng.
And remember what I said about American ginseng? That when you go to a Chinese herb store and they have ginseng plastered all over the place, they're not selling you Chinese ginseng or even Korean ginseng. They're selling you American ginseng, which is cool to neutral. And it has the same kind of tonic properties, but it's not heating. Whereas Chinese ginseng is very strong, and the older it is, the stronger it is. And Korean ginseng is even stronger. I think what do? They to make it colored red, and they boil it in something, I don't know, whatever it is, but they're making it even more yang. That's why it's so red and hard.
Yeah, American ginseng is a wonderful yin tonic.
So you can substitute American ginseng across the board, or Codonopsis. Codonopsis, what do you need? How much? A double or triple the amount to equal ginseng. So it's a weaker type of chi tonic, but it's standardly used. Whenever you see ginseng in a formula, and Chinese doctors are prescribing a formula, most of the time they don't ever use ginseng. They use Codonopsis. It's because it's milder. You know what Codonopsis is? Yeah, it's a great herb. You can grow it in some parts of the country. I've seen it on the East Coast where people were cultivating it, and it's a vine and it covers like a whole fence. And you got this plentiful herb with all these ginseng-like roots in the ground that you could dig up, and it's pretty wonderful. It's a big question about cultures. Are we stealing the Chinese culture? No, I think these things are meant for everybody in the world. They were gifts for the whole human race. The things that were given to the Native Americans were not just meant for Native Americans, they were meant for everybody. And I've gotten into trouble with people about that in the past, but I insist on that, and all my herbalist colleagues also. And so the growing Chinese herbs in America, maybe they're going to be a little bit different, some of them, but who knows? Maybe they might even be better. But you can grow a lot of them, and most of the herbs that we're using are not native to America anyway.
Yeah, we have an intermediate student, Karen, living in San Diego, who's growing a lot of Chinese herbs and making them available. She's posting that information on the forum, so check that out, because she makes them both as provides them both as bulk teas and granulated extracts, and they're growing down in San Diego.
Yeah, Karen's here.
Karen's here.
Yeah, she's here.
Sorry.
Oh,
I
you're
am
behind my camera. All right. Well, see, I'm giving you an ad.
Well, we actually import from China. So we don't grow anything in San
Yeah,
Diego. I'm afraid
Oh, I
to
thought
say.
you were growing them there.
Oh, I wish. I really
Okay.
wish.
Okay.
Actually, there is a group that I follow on YouTube that's called Mountain Gardens. And it's about this elderly gentleman. He looks like he's 100 and he's just full of knowledge, but he's in like North Carolina and he grows so many different Chinese herbs. And he has his little herbology and it's just fascinating to
I
watch.
know that guy, Joe something, I forget.
Joe
his name.
Hollis, I think.
Yeah, Joe Hollis, yeah.
Yeah, he's fascinating. So
He's a
yeah.
really cool guy.
And the Berkeley Botanical Gardens grows a lot of Chinese herbs, and there are farms that grow Chinese herbs. Rico Czech grows some Chinese herbs, and you can get them from him as starts and grow them yourselves.
And Crimson Sage.
Like Don Shen we got from him. Salvia mythoriza, the red sage root.
Who does that?
Rico
Who's
Czech. RICCO.
Strictly medicinal. Look it up on the internet. We already talked about all that. You got all those notes. Where to buy herb plants.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
probably in your books.
It was posted.
Other questions, folks?
I have other questions if nobody else does, but I don't want to dominate. Clarity asked one.
No, you don't.
Go for it.
You're not allowed. You're allowed to ask as many questions as you like, and I'm allowed to answer as many as I feel like.
Okay, so this is about Ayurveda. I guess I had a few questions around Ayurveda. Number one, I know that we're born with our dosha, and if we have that dosha through life.
You're born what?
Dosha. We're born with a dosha.
Yeah, there's two kinds of doshas. There's the one that you're born with, and the one that you acquire.
Right, and
Okay.
so that was my question is regarding kids. I don't know when a child would, you would fully be able to assess what dosha they are. I kind of feel like even with my 5-year-old, I can see, but then they kind of change sometimes too, and I don't know if can kids get to that where they, the Vikriti, where they've changed their predominant one. That's one question. And then I'm getting confused when we need to, if we want to address a particular imbalanced dosha, when we would do that if it counteracts their underlying dosha, so for example, if I see a person is Vata person, like they're Vata dosha predominantly, but they might have an imbalance where it would involve, so Vata is not supposed to have bitter or it could throw them off. But if they have an imbalance with where you feel like they need bitters, then what do you do? Do you focus on you think's imbalanced, but then you still have to keep in mind their underlying dosha, or am I not thinking about it right?
No, you're thinking right. The underlying dosha, you always treat what you see, and if what you're seeing is a pitta type of symptom, which is inflammation, you're going to treat it regardless of whether they're vata, kapha, or pitta. If you're seeing a vata type disease, you're always going to treat a vata condition regardless of what dosha they are. But as a general rule, in terms of their whole life, you might emphasize helping them with diet and activities and other things that are complementary or help to balance out their imbalance. We're all imbalanced. You know, and so we're always dealing with our native born imbalance. We all have a propensity. There's a value to it, you know. The Vata people are the dreamers, the Pitta people are the activators, and the Kapha people are the builders. So we need all of those elements to make a happy family, a happy society, and that's why nobody is just one or the other.
Right. And then the other question about, you know, would you know a child's dosha, or, you know, as a child, or do they, at some point, they have to be older, you know, you're an adult and then you can really tell? When can you assess correctly? Like, when does a person encompass their full dosha? Is it right from the start?
I don't know. Does it make any difference? I don't know.
Okay.
I got enough to think about with what I know, let alone trying to think about things that I don't know.
Okay, well, that's all I had.
Well, that'd be a good post on the forum,
Okay.
because we have some really good Ayurvedic experts who could answer that potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm an Ayurvedic expert, I think.
Other.
I call myself I never was baptized Ayurvedic expert, but
Did we get all your questions, Nikki? Great. Anybody
Couldn't get
else
my
have?
stuff.
Okay, great. Amy, did
five-
you get all
five
your
minutes.
questions?
I had one in my pathology class on Monday night, which is why I missed the Q&A. We were learning about the urinary system. And do you view a UTI and like in the levels of disease is like a level 1 because the bacteria is coming, it's basically like entering the urinary catheter, you know, like, or canal, like from the backwards notion, almost like like a lung infection would be coming into the lung? Or is it deeper than that? Like, or I guess like when it goes from a UTI to the bladder to the kidney, you know, kind of the same thought process of like something like a lung infection going from the nasal to the throat to the lung.
it's internal. If it's inside the body, it's internal.
Yeah, and it's bladder, and then like you say, potentially involving kidneys. Or it could be kidneys and then involving bladder. So you can have deficient kidney yang creating a bladder infection. There are many different patterns for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
But applying 8 principles to a bladder infection, only some of those principles are really the ones that you're going to focus on. Guess what they are? You're going to focus on whether it's hot or cold,
Okay.
whether it's yin deficient or yang excess.
Or even yang deficient. Yeah.
Yang deficient.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that'd be like the difference between like an older person getting a kidney infection because they have prolapse in their, bladder versus like a young person getting an infection because they're having too much sex and they're not being clean.
But internal and external is not that important in relationship to that disease.
It's internal. Yeah.
It's internal, but it'll show up in other things, whether the disease is internal.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Melissa, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, I had just a couple brief questions about the tongue diagnosis pre-recorded.
Mhm.
And I really appreciated seeing all the pictures in that.
Great.
And it was super helpful to see a picture of a normal healthy tongue. Just because there were so many varieties. But I didn't see a normal healthy picture of the underside of the tongue. So there was a picture of the blue veins,
Yes.
blood stasis, And I was curious what the normal would look like. Would it be all pinkish and red?
No blue veins.
No blue veins. Okay. And then the other question was about the cracks. And maybe that was going to be in part 2, but I was curious about a little transverse crack in what I think is the lung area of the tongue. So not the tip, but it's not the middle, right? It's like the first.
And it's going across.
And it's going across.
Mhm.
What does that mean?
In general, it means yin deficiency of the lungs.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Lesley and I may have a little bit of a different perspective on the tongue, but what I know about tongue diagnosis is the most important thing is to not get hung up on the cracks and things like that. Look at the overall tongue. Is it fat? Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it thin? Is it pointed? Is it yellow? The cracks sometimes is geographic. People are just born with a geographic tongue, and they just have cracks all over the place. And also trying to identify organs in particular parts of the tongue. Don't get too hung up on that either. If the diagnosis of the organs happens to coincide with other things that you're seeing, you can say, yeah, okay. If it doesn't, which is also often the case, you don't have to count that. You first look at the overall picture of the tongue. And the same thing with the pulses. You know, the pulses are supposed to feel all 12 organs, 6 on one wrist and 6 on the other wrist, and the organs are so situated less than a ½ inch apart. And those organs may or may not actually be informative. You have to really feel the overall pulse and get that in your mind first. Feels weak, feels soft, feels empty, feels tight, feels thin, feels inflated. Get the overall picture. That's the most important thing. What do you think about that, Lesley? You got input on all that?
Yeah, no, and I mean, the tongue diagnosis gets into everything that you mentioned. She's just going a little bit more refined.
Yeah, but I think people get distracted with, some things on the tongue, like the red tip of the tongue. That definitely means a lot of worry. It can, and worry injuring the heart. Whether the tongue is bald on the side, I think it's, what is that, liver cheese, something?
Liver yin deficiency. See, yeah, different people use different diagnostic systems.
Right.
Put emphasis on it differently. I personally love tongue diagnosis. And if I see a discrepancy between the pulse or with the pulse with what's going on in the body, I go to the tongue. And almost always it reflects to me what I see going on in the body. And I want to put this out there too, because somebody wrote Jill about this from that class. They were asking about the test. Oh, I don't want to give away the test. But okay, so I won't talk about the test, but I will say that the liver is the sides of the tongue, whereas the top sides is the gallbladder. So
the top of the sides.
The top of the sides is the gallbladder, but the very sides is the liver. And it's not unusual for me to see, scallops a lot of times, which is the spleen Qi deficiency, but it can be red in those scallops, in which case you're seeing heat in the liver. But a lot of times it's actually peeled, like a part of the top layer of the tongue was taken off, and that's yin deficiency. And the redder it is underneath that yin deficiency spot, the more heat there is to maybe even what we call yin fire. But it's coming from a different cause. It's from a lack of fluids, cooling, moistening fluids and substance versus excess heat.
And also, the longer they keep their tongue stuck out, the redder it's going to get. So periodically, if they had their tongue out for a while, say, okay, put your tongue back in and stick it out again.
Yep. That's in the class too.
And the other thing that doesn't get diagnosed with tongue diagnosis is the kidneys. You know, that should be the back of the tongue, And nobody ever looks to the back of the tongue that much because it's always kind of muddy looking. So the kidneys are always bad.
I do. I look at the back of the tongue all the time.
All right.
And that's in the tongue diagnosis class.
Well, I noticed was taking pictures of the tongue, was trying to get a good light, but I didn't see that far back area very well until then I used my phone flashlight,
Yep.
if you will, looking in the bathroom, and then was like, oh wow, I see way more back there that wasn't, but I don't know how I would ever get that in a picture.
Yeah. You know.
So it's a little
You
tricky.
can take a picture with a flash, but
Yeah, I
never seen
tried and that was
Machiochi that-
hard. So
I
I can see the value of you having your halogen light in your clinic with a, halogen flashlight and
I
looking, and
use LED because it's white. I think the halogens tend to be a little yellowish. You really want a white light because the
LED.
yellowish lights will color the coat a little bit. It's harder to tell. And the other trick, and I think I put this in the tongue diagnosis webinar, is that sometimes it can be hard to tell if it's a white coat or a yellow coat. So I'll take a white piece of paper and hold it up next to the tongue to see, is this really white or and then I'll see a lot of times something I think is white is actually yellow.
I don't know. You know, I've looked at so many different tongues, and I practically never see a mention of the kidneys.
Yeah, you can really tell kidney essence deficiency, kidney yin deficiency, and food stagnation in the lower jiao. All of that shows up very nicely.
Have you seen pictures
do
of?
you ever do anything with
Yes.
the tongue scraping? Like I was taught with Ayurveda, to get a tongue scraper and look at the color, but I never had pictures to know what meant what. But I do notice a different color
You
from,
don't want to use a tongue scraper before you look at the tongue. You want to
right,
look at everything
but
that's on
just
the
in
tongue.
general, for hygiene and like,
Yeah, for hygiene, you can use it.
and just being curious.
Yeah, you can absolutely use it that way. And it can give you a clue as to a rooted and unrooted coat too, because if you scrape your tongue and the coat is gone, it's unrooted. And if it's still, you're still seeing something there, it's rooted. So that can give you a clue diagnostically.
Oh boy. All right.
I haven't watched those videos yet, so it may be covered there. How do you deal with coffee drinkers in the sense that coffee is always going to discolor the tongue?
That's right. And quite often somebody doesn't tell me and I'll look at their tongue and they do not have symptoms of heat. And I see a yellow coat. And one of the first things I think is, are they drinking coffee? And I ask them, and 9 times out of 10 they are. And so it's coloring it. And there's sometimes you get really strange colors on the tongue and you have to ask, did you just eat a lozenge before you came? What did you just eat? And it almost always clears up with that.
Mm-hmm. Is there any way to see below the coffee? I mean, without them brushing their teeth. I mean, I don't even know if it really goes away if you brush your teeth if you're a heavy coffee drinker.
When you stop the coffee, the coat goes away.
It does. Well,
Yeah.
So how long do you have to stop drinking coffee for the coat to go away? Do you know?
Oh, within a week, you're going to start seeing a change.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that you're anti-coffee and Michael is pro-coffee. Is that right?
In the same household.
Everything in moderation, including moderation.
Michael
I'm
is a
pro-coffee.
good element, a Mediterranean, strong constitution. He can get away, and a male. He can get away with so many things. And I'm a canary in the mine. I'm super sensitive. So it's really quite an interesting dance over here sometimes.
Yeah, we're all just getting really familiar with each other. I think women know about gender a lot more than men do, and now we're all just beginning to appreciate the differences even more than we did before between the two, and the roles that women play in life can be extremely important. But it's been downplayed for centuries. Have you ever wondered why there's so many women in the herb course? and in all the healing arts. When I teach, it's always women, you know, maybe 2 or 3 men, you know, because women have a natural instinct for healing, because they have issues with their body that have to deal with, and men never need to think about it. So, and also they care for children, so they need to know about that. But they've been suppressed with all of that for millennia, and even in Chinese medicine, you never hear about the women healers. They're all men. There were some Chinese healers, Chinese women healers, but they're all men. They're sages. What's the feminine for sage? Sagess?
Goddess.
No, that's too much. I thought queen was a little bit too much when Aviva said that queens. I said, yeah, what's that? What's that mean? That the men
Wise woman
There you go, wise woman. Yep.
or witch.
Well, that's yeah, okay, wise woman. That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Are there any other questions?
Yeah. Well, I think this day is just about catching up with me.
We've got a hand raised. Go for it.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
iPhone
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes, yeah, my name's Sharon, and I guess I am so new to all of this. I've probably studied Western herbalism a lot more and dabbled a little bit in Ayurveda. So I'm very excited about the patterns of the energy assessments that you're describing. And I've been intimidated for a long time, but then I saw your course and I thought, okay, I'm going to dive in and I'm going to work on figuring this stuff out. But my question is, after you go through the diagnosis stage or assessment stage, how do you make a decision about which system to use to apply to the remedy, whether it's Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, or even Western herbs? Is there a system that you use, or is it all a case-by-case basis and based on your familiarity with the actions of the various herbs and formulas, or how do you go about that?
Well, I wish you and we could sit down for about 4, 5, or 6 hours.
Yeah.
But you're just starting, and the questions you're answering are going to be answered as you get into the course.
Okay.
Because it's a very big answer you're asking for. Essentially, what you're doing is there's a system of herbal diagnosis, which is what we're using is Chinese medicine as the major system of herbal diagnosis.
You're right.
And when you make the diagnosis, it will point to the category that the herb in Chinese medicine is classified in. So it tells you have this diagnosis, like it's wind or it's heat, and then you go to the category in your book, in your clinical manual. It says herbs for heat, and then
Okay.
you choose the herb for heat. Now, in complicated situations, you're going to have as I said in my talk, you're going to have more than one herb usually in formulas, because people are complicated and conditions are complicated.
Right.
So you might have an herb that is hot and dry, but the person has already is exhibiting symptoms of dryness. So you need to put in something that's going to be kind of like moistening to counteract the dryness of the herb. In other words, to control it.
Right.
So when you're putting together an herbal formula, and within the first 12 lessons, as you get on towards the end, it talks about how herbal formulas are prepared. And
Okay.
so all of that's going to really fill in for you there. But what I did do is I took out from lesson number 8, the 8 methods of herbal therapy, which is very, very common with Western herbs. You know when
Okay.
somebody needs to have a purgative, needs to have a laxative, when somebody needs to have an anti-inflammatory.
Okay.
One of those categories is for that. So you can immediately start using all of that.
Yeah.
Even from what you know about Western herbs, you can start using them that way. But they all fit into a system where the whole system locks together. One thing points to the other thing, which points to the other thing, and they all kind of like, it's one big system that is interlocking. And that's how you actually will remember it, and that's how you use it. Right now you're just finding your way into the whole cosmos of fascinating things that will occupy your mind with great entertainment for the rest of your life if you're into it.
Yes, and that's why I've been very timid about asking any questions. I feel like they're all
Don't ever be timid, because we're all in the same place as you are.
okay.
That's part of the game. Never be timid. Be always brave. Ask whatever question. There's no dumb question ever.
Well,
I bet you a lot of people can resonate to what you asked, the question you asked right now.
okay.
It's a great question, Sharon. And I will add to that if once I've figured out the pattern somebody is experiencing, if somebody has an excess condition, I tend to go to Western herbs because they're so readily available here. And
Okay.
but if there's a deficiency condition, I tend to go to Chinese, maybe Ayurvedic herbs. And
Okay.
it also depends on the patient compliance. So in what form can you get it in the person? And that can determine which herbs you use as well.
True. I've experienced that myself. All right. Well, that's just very helpful, and I
one more
appreciate.
thing.
Okay.
One more thing. I started out with Western herbs, and what led me deeply into Chinese herbs was that there wasn't any concept of tonification in Western herbal medicine.
Hmm.
There were things that make you pee and shit and sweat and anti-infections and things like that, but nothing that tonified chi, tonified blood. There's nothing in Western herbal medicine that when I took it, when I was into it, that actually brought that out.
Right. It doesn't have the depth of the energetic assessment that the Chinese method does, I don't think.
Not anymore.
And it's the tonics that brought me into Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
So again, the deficiency conditions, yeah, because you can use the tonics for that.
Okay.
And in deficiency in particular, you just don't have any concept in Western approaches for that at all.
Okay. All right. I have another question.
I like your question.
Well, they're they're so broad at this point because I'm still trying to integrate and get more into the weeds, but we've talked about a number of times in what I've listened to so far has sometimes been made mention of the meridians and how they connect to different areas of the body. And so I was wondering, I'm a kind of person that likes to really understand how things work, both energetically and physiologically. And so is it helpful to get a book to kind of understand the nature of the meridians to help picture the various energy channels and how they connect to the different organs better as I studied more Chinese medicine?
That's getting into it all mixed up right now, because the 12 meridians that we learned in acupuncture is now giving sway to something called micro meridians. Micro meridians means that any place where you have your whole body is full of meridians.
Yeah.
Because that's where the chi is circulating.
Right.
And so think of the 12 meridians as being like the freeways and the highways.
Mm-hmm.
And they're named after the fact that they pass through those particular organs. The kidney meridian passes through the kidneys. The stomach meridian passes through the stomach, the heart, and so forth. That's why they're named that.
Right.
So when you're giving an herb for the heart, it'll tell you that it goes to the heart, kidney, or a stomach.
Right.
That's because some of the symptoms associated with those organs are treated with that herb.
Okay.
That's kind of a vague way of putting it, but the herb will not only treat the specific organ, but it'll actually treat the meridian, any blockage in the meridian
On that highway.
on that highway.
Right. Okay. I get that.
So it's not necessary at this level for sure. Even at advanced level, we don't present the meridians in this course. But I start telling people, well, it's good to get them to learn the meridians at some point when you're advanced, but it's not
Right.
necessarily that important with herbal medicine.
Okay.
It is with acupuncture.
Right. Right. All right. Well, thank you for that answer. I appreciate that so much.
Sure.
All of the answers both you and Lesley provided. Thank you.
My
Welcome.
pleasure.
Okay, I have one more question. So,
Go for it, Amy.
about the tonic herbs, how do you view like integrating those in? I know like dragon herbs, I think Ron Tiergarten, or I don't know how to pronounce his last
Ron
name.
Teagard, yeah.
I mean, his theory, I guess, is like everyone should be on tonic herbs all the time and just kind of to help with longevity and just keeping your vitality as you age. Do you guys think that, or is it more of just to correct a deficiency?
I could answer. You want to answer that, Lesley?
Well, I'd say more to correct a deficiency. The problem is if you tonify when somebody has excess or stagnation, it's like adding more cars to rush hour. So you can make even more congestion happen in the body. But if somebody has deficiency at the same time they have excess, you can do both at the same time. So you can tonify whatever area is weak, and you can move or eliminate whatever area is excess or stagnant.
What Ron is representing is a branch of herbalism called Taoist herbalism, which is based on using on a lot of use of the tonics and longevity ideas. That's what he's representing. And I do think that his products are the best tonics available in the market. It's called Dragon Herbs, by the way. You buy ginseng. I would like to buy ginseng preparations from Ron. Some of the other ones that he makes, 8 Immortals and things like that. The tonics can be balanced so that they don't interfere with other problems in the body. But generally, you just don't take a tonic when somebody has an acute infection. You don't take any tonics at all when somebody has a cold, flu, fever. But in between, when you want to build people up and build up the reserves, I mean, I use them all the time. So, so I think it's a good thing to take. But he's big on the tonics, and I think he makes a great contribution because his are really the best. He goes to China and he brings the best ones. He makes the best ones that I know.
And it depends on one's phase of life too. I mean, you're not going to tonify children usually, typically. But the older somebody gets, the more they do need that tonification support, except during acute or, add in things.
Unless they're not thriving.
I want to throw some, I just can't believe it, but we're at 6:30 just about. And I want to throw in there that we have a thread on the forum that's all outstanding essays. So if you want to know about essays for your lesson tests, go there and just check those out, those outstanding essays. They'll give you ideas of how to form your own essays. I just wanted to be sure I mentioned that. And Yeah. Did we get everybody's questions?
How do you like the seminar so far?
This is Sharon. I love them. I absolutely love the video format, and I love your handouts and the structure of how you have everything with the reading lists, and it feels very much like college to me, and as opposed to which I've spent a lot of years in college. So it's felt the most comfortable for helping me to kind of move forward and learn more as I go. It's just, I guess especially for this type of medicine, it feels like a needed structure for me because of the in-depth knowledge of and learning about the patterns and the energy and the diagnostic techniques, and I'm really excited about that. And I think you both do a great job. So appreciative.
Great. Thanks, Sharon.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's serving your needs that way.
Yeah, I would say I purchased the course last June, and like I said during the introduction of the first day, I was getting really bogged down in the reading and not feeling like I was able to absorb it a lot, and especially with the theory. And it would have been so helpful to have these videos, even like, because so many of us start at random times throughout the year, to try to have, if we could maybe purchase the module like when we start, so we could add this in as we start. And I don't know if you can maybe do that or something similar to that going forward, that maybe we could.
Yeah, I thought we did offer that.
There's a lot of videos that are already done that I've made that are not necessarily part. The way these seminars are structured, Lesley and I try to structure it so that we're providing stuff that you might not get in the books.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of videos on Korean hand therapy that I wish you'd all would watch and
Mm-hmm.
learn from. There's a whole long video on kratom that I did. There's videos on the 6 stages, which we're not using in the seminars. And there's a video on the 4 stages of heat epidemics. There's a whole bunch of those that are available. Did you know about those?
I've been seeing a lot of them on the YouTube videos, and I think since I've started the course, you guys have started posting more of the videos on one of the pages on the website, and that page has been populated a lot since I started the course last summer. So
yeah. Well, those are things you can be looking, and then
and then the blog is phenomenal, so I can search that because it's such a wealth of information that you guys have been putting together over such a long time.
And then the chats. I mean, that's something new. We didn't used to do that. We do chats every month.
Mm-hmm.
So hope to see you all on that. The chats are just like what we're doing right here. Mm-hmm. And then there's the sessions with Susan and Holly and so forth. There's enough to keep you busy and keep you on track if you use it all throughout the whole year. Because I know how easy it is to lose the thread of everything and just kind of get lost in doing other things. But if you make this a priority, if it's something you really want, and stay with it and take and take maximum advantage of everything that we have provided. The forum should be a lot more active than it is, and with these kinds of questions, I mean, the teachers are roving on the forum and answering questions and going back and forth that way. It's in your lap to make of it as much as you need to advance.
Yeah, I definitely did not put as much focus as I should have in the Chinese medicine side. Instead, I kind of took a detour into the Western side to try to shore up that knowledge first.
That's
so
okay.
And that's fine. That's fine.
I detour all the time.
I think Heather had one last question.
Yeah, it was to do with, you said something about you were the canary in the coal mine. And that connected me to something that I saw in Nancy Angelini's presentation that I had a question about. She did a fairly in-depth constitutional type exercise, if you recall that, where she gave some examples and then had you try to figure out whether it was a metal type or a fire type or whatever. And there was one special constitutional types that I guess she didn't have time to go over, so she skipped that slide. And that had things like, it was called a special constitutional type. And she said they have sensitivity to drugs, foods, pollen, environmental allergens, hay fever, asthma.
Was that the metal type?
Pardon me?
Was that the metal type?
She didn't address it. She called it a special type. Well, that was the slide. So I was just wondering, is that a different type?
Referring to, but
I
you
can show
have
it to you.
I'm sorry.
I can show it to you. It was this slide on her presentation.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering, is this something outside of sort of the normal metal fire
I don't know.
elements?
Recall
Or
that, but there are the 5, when you talk about the 5 elements, you're talking fire, earth, metal,
yeah.
water, wood. And metal does tend to be more sensitive.
okay, so maybe that's what she was getting at, was that these type of people, and maybe then yourself, if you're calling yourself a canary in the coal mine, it have more of a metal predominance.
Potentially.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
When it has to do with the lungs.
Exactly. So, but you mentioned allergies, and I
A
think
lot of it did seem to
water
have to do with the lungs. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if it was something different than that because she called it a special type, but okay.
What you could do is pull out our Chinese traditional herbal medicine Obi-Wan book and look in there at the 5 elements and see if you get
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
a little deeper. Yeah.
Thank you.
There are Chinese constitutions, but you guys got enough to wrestle with right now. I think that the constitutions, maybe next year we'll present them, but they're not. I like the doshas best of all for constitutional analysis. That's why I have it in there because mainly because of the doshas, that the 3 doshas. But there's the fire type, there's the wood type, there's the metal type, there's a spleen type, and there's constitutions that go with each one of those, and that'll come along in your reading and as you study with us, that'll present itself. But it's not imperative that you have all of that now. If you work with the
Lesson 5 of the course.
Yeah. No, and my question was really whether this was a different type.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I can't answer that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Well, as Michael said, take advantage of all the resources. The chat, you can be doing 2 chat or Zooms a week plus the Q&A. And yeah.
Sign up for a consultation with the
free clinic.
With the graduates.
Yeah.
Learn so much about how it all comes together doing that. Sharon, that would be a good thing for you to do. Because that's a teaching in itself. Okay, I'm going to say goodnight. I think I've really spent myself today. I had a great day, by the way, but all of a sudden the tiredness just. But
well, you're a great class, and I can just tell already that since Monday night, your questions are even deeper and more further into the material. So just keep going like you are.
I'm going to look forward to seeing you next year. Okay, you're going to be an intermediate next year.
Yep.
And I'm taking down all your names, and if you don't come, you're going to get a phone call.
Please do.
Please do. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
He just lit our fire elements under our tushes.
Yay.
Great.
Good night.
Good night.